He's on the ground.
I think it's a way to connect with someone.
I stepped on it to make sure it was the rock.
What's really tricky is that really want to deep conversation about that place. They just want to signal like, yeah, I've thought about the place that you're from. But yeah, I mean, this is a book that, you know, for a while is the book that comes to people's minds when they want to understand Appalachia. And it was never meant to be just a memoir. I mean, his subtitle is a memoir of a family in cultural crisis, and a memoir of culture is not a thing. You can write a memoir of yourself. You can write a memoir, arguably, of your family. But a memoir of a culture, I mean, there's sociology, there's ethnography, but he's not doing either of those things.
After you read your book, have you heard any response from Senator Vance about like the criticisms of his book?
Not directly. He was invited to the Appalachian Studies Association conference in 2018 when it was in Ohio. And he did come and was part of a panel. I have not gotten the sense that criticism of the book has really landed and been very damaging to him. He's not responded to any of the criticism that I'm aware of, and he has not engaged with the community of Appalachian scholars who tried to engage with him about the ways that the book is offensive to people in the region.
Meredith McCarroll co-edited the book Appalachian Reckoning. Meredith, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's not exactly news to say that Pluto is no longer considered a planet. That made headlines almost 20 years ago. But what if I told you that decision at the time was controversial? Not just among those of us who'd grown up learning about Pluto, but also among scientists. Regina Barber of NPR Science Podcast Shortwave has been looking into this controversial vote as part of the show's Space Camp series. She found that there are some planetary scientists, like Vladimir Lyra, who are still making the case for Pluto years later based on how it was formed.
Planetary sciences used to be part of astronomy. Now, there is some mixing, of course, but by and large, we're talking about two different communities.
So the fate of a planet was being decided by people who don't study planets, mostly.
And that was, and is, still one of the criticisms about different astronomers
what highway we're going to run into? 40?
Of planets. And who is studying planets are planetary scientists.
Divide or
Regina
whatever.
zoomed in
Drop down
on the
next to
definition
the
that
park.
Phineas
sealed
divide?
Pluto's fate and led to its demotion.
Phineas divide, is that what it's called?
Phineas?
Nez. I think it's pronounced Nez. So the K is
In
silent.
2006, at the International Astronomical
I think the K is silent.
424 members
Nez.
representing over
That's
1,000
not silent.
scientists changed Pluto's fate forever. They decided that in order to be a planet in our
It
solar
would be
system,
Nez if
an
the K
object
was
needed to
silent.
meet
Yeah,
three
that's what I think it
criteria.
is.
You think it's Nez?
One,
Yeah.
it had to orbit the sun.
Oh, okay.
Two, it had to be big enough to assume hydrostatic equilibrium,
could
which
be
is a fancy
Kinez.
way to say it needed to be round. And three,
Now imagine
it had
if
to
Kinea
clear
Reeves
its
changes
neighborhood
names
around
to
itself. Basically, to have a strong enough gravitational pull that there wasn't anything left immediately
Neat.
around it, like no asteroids
That'd be
or
a
other
tongue
small
twister.
bits of rock or ice. And that third requirement, that's what disqualified Pluto. Vladimir
That was one of
Lyra
my
is a
trees up there.
computational
Now you
astrophysicist,
got
and
between
he
the
says
trees.
that an unintended
on top of
consequence of this vote is that people don't understand the
Oh,
value
okay.
of studying the dwarf planet anymore. When really, planet or not, it's a key
you put
piece
that
of
rock in the
understanding
car?
our solar system and how we got here.
Pluto holds
Got that one I brought up?
to understand how planets in
That
general
little rock you brought up?
form.
Yeah. That's
So,
what-
as
150 pounds.
a
No,
scientist
it's only like an inch
who
thick.
studies how planets form,
Maybe two.
for me, Pluto is a brick that helps me understand building.
It was too heavy to carry all the way down where we parked
story is
before.
that there was several discoveries of large objects in the solar system
Not too bad right
that
there.
scientists
Plus-
decided
Plus, I didn't want to carry it
called
last time because it was all wet. I
And
just pulled it out of the
astronomers would
creek.
later
So
point to
that's what
those
you-
discoveries
that's what
when
you came
deciding
looking
how to
for, was that rock,
differentiate
right?
the 8 planets we still have today from the
Pretty
other
much.
objects in space. The big
Who's
two
told me that?
are
I would think you were
Ceres and
crazy.
Aries. The realization that Ceres
didn't tell you.
exists
No,
came
I did tell
first
you. You
in
just
the early
didn't understand.
1900s. It was born out of this search for
Or
a
hear me,
planet in
maybe.
between
Maybe you didn't hear me.
Mars and Jupiter. Then there was the dwarf planet Aries.
When Aries was found, that was the catalyst to declassify Pluto because all of a sudden you found an object that is more massive than Pluto. Right? So either you also call that object a planet, or you have to rethink the definition of planet.
Yeah, no, that totally
Well,
makes sense.
like some kind of a building
let's just
down
step
there.
back for a second though and like think about and talk about how do
Well,
planets and dwarf planets like Pluto form in the first place?
Right, so the way that planets form is you start from cloud of gas and dust. And modern astronomy has found these disks of gas orbiting young stars.
You could
And
park
what
in
you
that
see
corner
is
right
that
there if
once
you
you
want
have
to.
dust in a disk of gas, coagulation will take place. So
You could park in that
build
corner if you want
larger
to.
grains out of the dust that you see in this
I don't want
disk.
to go all the way down.
A bit like if you don't clean your room often enough,
Well,
you're
park
going to
up
get dust
There
bites,
was just a
right?
road back
Now
here.
imagine that you
Oh.
don't clean your room
That
for
went
10
down.
million years. Just how big those dust bites will get, right?
I was wondering why it had so many tracks on it. I figured it
So
just
with
was
that,
a campsite.
form the first grains, right?
know,
The
it's
first
kinda
dust
nice.
grains. And then there are mechanisms happening in
Maybe
this
we get to
disk
down
to
the
help
other road.
concentrate this dust grains. So
Oh, you
you
record that
get
view, though.
an object of the size of asteroids. We call this what is planetesimals, which is
Drive
a
up that other road.
portmanteau
I wanted
of
to
a
record
planet
you.
plus infinitesimal. So a very small part of a planet.
Did you
So
want me to stop?
asteroids,
No.
comets, they are the so-called
Sorry.
planetesimals, or as I like to call them, the building blocks of planets.
I recorded.
And then once you build to that size, gravity
Different
comes
times.
into play, and then they can keep growing to the size of the Earth, or bigger, and that's why they get so massive that they attract gas from the disk and then form a gas planet like Jupiter.
Okay, so what happened to our friend Ceres though? It's got a lot of asteroids near it. How come they haven't combined together and like turned into a bigger planet?
So the asteroid belt did not become a big planet because of the presence of Jupiter.
Really? Okay.
Jupiter is a very massive planet, so the tides from Jupiter end up exciting the orbits, so that it's much more likely that when two planetesimals in the asteroid belt collide, they're going to find.
Wait, so just so that I understand, so you're saying that because Jupiter is so big and because its gravitational pull is so influential on all of these asteroids, they make them move faster so that when they do collide, they smash instead of moving slower and just coalescing?
Correct. Yeah, we call it a dynamic hot population.
And is the Kuiper belt similar? Like, is it also dynamically hot population, or is there something else going
We
on?
call it the asteroid boogie.
The Kuiper belt is different, especially at the region of Pluto. The number of objects per volume of space is so low that they can go ages without finding another object. So this bodies just didn't grow much because they formed so far away from the sun. And also the density of other objects nearby is so small that they never meet each other. So they couldn't really grow, right?
Then how did Pluto get made then?
Right, that's
Pretty big.
Pluto is very big. Pluto did not form where Pluto is. Pluto formed like about half the distance where it is now and was put in its orbit by Neptune.
What? So this is kind of blowing my mind because you're saying that the definition of a dwarf planet is that it orbits the sun, that it's round basically, and that it cleared its path. But you're telling me that at one point maybe Pluto did have a cleared path. Maybe it wasn't in this belt.
Right, there is a very good point, and that's one thing that prompted
Goosebumps.
planetary scientists, in fact, to use another definition of planet that they call the geophysical definition of
Yeah.
planet. That depends only on the mass. So in that case, a planet is an object that has enough mass to be round. So that's only the second part of the IAU definition. And that makes sense, for some astronomers, including me. Because to me, right, and to others too, it doesn't really make sense to define a planet based on location. If you take Pluto, put it where Mercury is.